Today we're going to be learning about the path, P-A-T-H, always all in capitals, and it's kind of the way that our computer keeps track of where software is located. It's very important if you're installing things on the terminal, and knowing how the path works and kind of how to troubleshoot the path is a great way to solve problems if, let's say, your Python stops working, or the wrong version of Node is running, or any sort of software-based issue that you're running into on the command line. So when you're running a command, when you're running, let's say, ls, which lists all of the folders in your directory, this is a program. Pretty much anything that you type on the command line, Python, all of these things are programs. And the thing is, when you type it, when I type ls, when I type Python, the first thing that the shell wants to do is go find ls and run it. Go find Python and run it. But if we look at this list of files here, we don't see ls. If we look at this list of files, we don't see Python. So where is it going in order to find ls? Where is it going in order to find Python? How does it know which ls to run, which Python to run? If I type which ls, this command tells me, oh, I am running ls from /bin/ls. If I type which Python, it's finding the Python in users soma pyenv shims python. It turns out that there are actually multiple Pythons installed on my machine right now. If I type which-a Python, it will show me all of them. It will say, hey, I got this one in pyenv shims, and I also have this one in /user/bin. Now I could run them by specifying their entire path. So the full path to that --version 3.8.2 /user bin python --version 2.7.16. Now, because I have these two different versions of Python on my machine, and they're both called Python, how does OS X know which version I want whenever I type Python? And the answer to that is the path. If I want to look at the path here, I could do print env to print out all of my environment variables. You can try that on your own. It looks very fancy. Instead, I'm just going to do print, not echo, print path, and it's going to print out the path for me. So what the path is a list of locations to look for commands when I type them into terminal. When I type ls, when I type Python, when I type anything into my terminal, these are the folders that it looks for things. And it goes in order. Because notice that we have users soma pyenv shims, which is where this Python lives. And then we have user bin, which is where this Python lives. And if I see which Python, if I run the command Python, which one gets run, it runs the one in pyenv, because pyenv is listed first in this list of folders. Now, if we look at the very last item in the list, applications, Visual Studio Code, app, contents, resources, app, bin. This is a fun trick. Now, what I have done is I have added this weird folder right here into my path that's inside of Visual Studio Code. And what this allows me to do is use the word command, or use the word code on the command line. And then let's say I can edit this file. So I'm going to say code zshrc, and it will magically go into Visual Studio Code and then open up this file for me. Now, the file that I had it open up is my zshrc file. If you're using an older version of OS X, bash profile is going to be the file you would open up here. This is the file that runs whenever you open up a new terminal. And one of the things that happens in this kind of setup file is you add things to the path. You say add pyenv to my path, add Visual Studio Code to my path. As a result of adding things to your path, adding new folders to your path, when you type in a command like code, it will search in new directories. Let's say I comment this out here. Let's say I say, look, I typed this line, but I want you to ignore it. If I open up a new shell and I look at my path, notice how now we no longer have the Visual Studio Code directory listed in my path. And if I type this same code command here that I did in my previous terminal, it will say command not found code. So because I removed this folder from my path, I opened up a new terminal, it ran all this code to set up the terminal, and it didn't add the path to the path. Now, when I type code, it doesn't know to go find the code command hiding in this folder. A lot of times when you're setting up software on your machine, they will have you run lines that add a certain folder to the path. Let's say when I set up pyenv, one of the things it does is says, add this to the path so that when you type Python, it looks for Python in pyenv shims instead of user bin Python. So it runs the right version of Python instead of the old version that comes with OS X. And if you forget to do that command, if you forget to add it to your zshrc for newer versions of OS X, or bash profile and older versions of OS X, your terminal won't be able to find Python or won't be able to find other commands because it only knows to look for commands in the path. And if that folder's not in the path, it won't be able to find it. It's not going to search everywhere in the computer for you. Sorry, it doesn't work that hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment export path and save it. One thing to note, if you're editing the zshrc or your bash profile in order to edit this path variable, if I try to run code now, because remember, I did save it here, it's still not going to work. And note that that's because this file, whether it's bash profile or zshrc, gets run whenever you open a new terminal window. So if you don't open a new terminal window, it's not going to pick up the change. So if I pick up the changes by opening a new terminal window, now I can successfully run this command again in order to open up the file in Visual Studio Code. And just note, this is more of a syntax when you're trying to edit your zshrc or bash profile. Export path all in caps equals, and then in quotes, $path, colon, so nothing like a comma is usually how you'd separate things, and then the new path that you want to add. So it kind of sticks in the old path here, adds the new path to it, and then saves it as the path. And then we magically have this beautiful, wonderful, it's not actually very long. This computer is pretty new. I haven't installed that much software on it. But give me another 6 months and this will probably be twice as long. And so that's the path. If you're working in Linux, the path is pretty much exactly the same. If you're working in Windows, there is a path, but you have to edit it in a slightly different way. I'll make another video about that someday. And that's it. Now you know all about the path and about how to make sure that when you type a command into your command line, terminal is actually able to find that command. Or if you have multiple different versions of the same command, which one it should use. And the one it should use is the one that comes first in the path, that beautiful magical variable.